Everyone always assumes the worst part of an alien invasion is the aliens. I'm here to tell you, having lived through the Florida landings personally, that the aliens were maybe the fourth or fifth worst part of that entire experience. I'd rank the humidity higher. I'd rank the alligators higher too, for reasons I'm about to explain. My name's Carl Renner. I run an airboat tour company out of the Everglades, or I did, before the Venturi Concordance decided our swampland was strategically valuable for reasons that still don't entirely make sense to me. I want to walk you through what actually happened down there, because the official reports leave out basically everything interesting. The Venturi showed up on a Thursday in July, which honestly tracks because nothing good happens in Florida in July. Their ships came down low over the Gulf, sleek and silver and clearly built by something with a much better understanding of aerodynamics than us. And within about 6 hours they'd established a beachhead somewhere out past the mangroves. Command's assessment was that they wanted the coastline. Standard invasion stuff, secure the shore, push inland, the usual playbook you'd expect from anybody trying to take a chunk of planet Earth. What nobody expected was how badly they'd underestimated what inland actually meant, once you got past the beaches and into the actual swamp. I got called up with my airboat because, as it turns out, National Guard units are not naturally equipped to navigate several hundred square miles of alligator-infested wetland, and apparently somebody remembered that guys like me exist for exactly this reason. "You want me to what?" I said, when a very tired-looking captain explained the assignment. "Guide our forces through the glades," he repeated. "The Venturi ground units are struggling with the terrain. We want to use that." I looked at him for a long moment. "Sir, with respect, everybody struggles with this terrain. It's not built for struggling with selectively." He didn't have a good response to that. Nobody really did, for the first few days. Here's what people don't understand about the Everglades unless they've actually spent real time out there. It's not really land and it's not really water, it's some genuinely upsetting combination of both that changes underneath you depending on the season, the tide, and apparently we discovered how annoyed the local wildlife happens to be that week. The Venturi ground forces, for all their advanced armor and weaponry, had clearly done zero reconnaissance on swamp warfare. Their vehicles kept getting stuck. Their infantry kept sinking. And their sensors, apparently calibrated for detecting conventional threats like tanks and soldiers, had absolutely no framework for processing 13-foot alligators that had lived through hurricanes, droughts, and at least one previous attempt by developers to pave over their habitat. The gators didn't care about the invasion. The gators just saw large, slow-moving things wading through their territory, and reacted the way gators have reacted to slow-moving things for approximately 80 million years. I want to be clear that I am not claiming the alligators were secretly some kind of tactical asset. Nobody trained them. Nobody coordinated with them. They were just doing what alligators do, which happened purely by coincidence, to line up extremely well with our defensive needs during those first chaotic days. Private Jenkins, a kid from Georgia who'd never seen a gator up close before this whole thing started, watched one drag a Venturi soldier under the water within about 10 seconds of the poor guy stepping off his transport, and turned to me with the expression of someone whose entire worldview had just been rearranged. "Is that normal?" he asked. "For here?" "Yeah," I said. "Welcome to Florida." The Venturi commander, whatever kind of creature or intelligence was actually running their operation, apparently decided fairly quickly that a full ground assault through the swamp wasn't working, and shifted tactics toward establishing a more defensible position on higher, drier ground. This is where things got genuinely strange, because higher, drier ground in that part of Florida mostly means small towns, retirement communities, and a truly staggering number of places selling either boiled peanuts or airbrush t-shirts. They set up a forward position near a town called Loxahatchee, which if you've never been, is exactly the kind of place where everybody owns at least one firearm, several own boats, and the local hardware store does brisk business in things that probably shouldn't be sold quite as casually as they are. I was there when the Venturi patrol first made contact with the locals, and I want to go on record saying that no military briefing anywhere in any species could have adequately prepared them for what they walked into. A retired guy named Hank Petrozin, 71 years old, had been sitting on his porch with a shotgun since the invasion started, mostly out of habit, because apparently he'd been doing that since some hurricane back in the 90s and never really stopped. When the first Venturi scout came walking up his driveway, sleek armor, advanced weapon, the whole intimidating package, Hank didn't run. Didn't even really react with much surprise, based on what witnesses told me afterward. He just said, "You're on my property," and fired a warning shot into the air. The Vantiri scout, apparently unfamiliar with the concept of a warning shot as opposed to an actual attack, immediately called for backup, which brought an entire squad down on poor Hank's little house within about 20 minutes. What they found was not what they expected. Word had apparently spread through the neighborhood fast because by the time that squad arrived, Hank had been joined by roughly a dozen neighbors, several dogs, one very confused peacock that somebody's cousin kept for reasons nobody ever fully explained, and enough firearms between them to make a small regional militia jealous. The Vantiri squad withdrew without firing a shot. I don't know exactly what their internal assessment of that encounter was, but I like to imagine it involved a lot of very confused reporting back up their chain of command. Command, once they heard about the Loxahatchee situation, had a moment of genuine strategic clarity that I still think about sometimes. If the swamp was fighting the Vantiri on its own terms, and the locals were fighting them on theirs, maybe the smartest move wasn't a conventional counteroffensive. Maybe the smartest move was just getting out of the way and letting Florida be Florida. I want to be clear, this was not an official strategy anyone put in writing. But informally, over the following week, our forces started focusing less on direct engagement and more on containment, funneling Vantiri patrols toward the parts of the state that were, for lack of a better term, going to handle themselves. The Alligators kept doing their thing in the wetlands. The retirees kept doing their thing in the small towns. And somewhere around day 9 of the invasion, we started getting reports of an entirely new problem that nobody, in any species, could have possibly anticipated. The Vantiri had made contact with a colony of feral hogs. I need you to understand that Florida's feral hog population is not a joke. These are not cute farm animals. These are aggressive, territorial, genuinely dangerous animals that have been breeding unchecked across the state for decades, and they do not recognize the concept of an advanced alien species as a reason to back down from a confrontation. A Vantiri supply convoy, trying to move through rural territory near Ocala, got absolutely ambushed by what witnesses described as an unreasonable number of angry pigs, and lost most of their cargo before they even understood what was happening. By this point, roughly 2 weeks into the invasion, I think the Vantiri command structure had started to genuinely question whether Florida was worth whatever they'd originally come here for. Their forces had been harassed by reptiles, ambushed by retirees, and routed by feral livestock, and none of it had involved a single conventional military engagement with our actual armed forces. I got called into a briefing around this time, mostly because command wanted local knowledge on what other surprises the state might have in store, and I remember a colonel asking me with complete sincerity, "Is there anything else like this we should know about?" I thought about it for a long moment. "Sir," I said, "I could be here all day." I told them about the pythons in the glades, invasive, enormous, and just as unbothered by alien invaders as the native gators had been. I told them about the sinkholes, which don't care about your advanced technology any more than they care about a family's minivan. I told them about summer thunderstorms that roll in fast enough to ground most conventional aircraft, and about a heat index that had, historically, taken down more unprepared outsiders than most of Florida's actual wildlife combined. The colonel took a lot of notes. I don't think any of it made it into an official strategic document because how do you write "the entire state is hostile to organized invasion by design" into a serious military report without someone questioning your judgment? But it was true. Still true. It'll probably always be true. The Vantiri withdrew from Florida entirely by the end of the 3rd week, pulling their remaining forces back to the coast and eventually off-world, in what I have to assume was one of the more embarrassing tactical retreats in whatever their military history looks like. We never got a clear answer on why they'd wanted the state in the first place. Some kind of resource survey, according to the little intelligence we managed to gather, though I've always privately suspected it might have had something to do with our proximity to Cape Canaveral, given how much attention their scout ships paid to the old launch facilities before things fell apart. Hank Petrozan got some kind of informal recognition from the state government, though I heard he mostly just wanted his warning shot back, since apparently he'd never actually fired that particular shotgun before the invasion and felt a little sentimental about it afterward. I still run airboat tours these days, though the questions from tourists have changed a fair amount since the invasion. People don't just want to see gators anymore. They want to hear about the invasion, about whether it's true the Alligators really did that much damage to an advanced alien military force, about whether the stories about the feral hogs got exaggerated somewhere along the way. I tell them the truth, mostly. The gators didn't win the war on purpose. Neither did the pigs or the pythons or Hank Petrozan's shotgun collection. Florida just did what Florida always does, chaotic and unbothered and completely uninterested in cooperating with anybody's plans, alien or otherwise, and it turned out that was more than enough to make an advanced invading force reconsider their whole strategy. I think about that a lot, honestly, especially when people ask me if I was scared during the invasion. I was plenty of times watching Vantiri's ships come down over the coast, not knowing what kind of fight we were actually in for. But somewhere around the fourth or fifth report of alien soldiers getting routed by wildlife that native Floridians have been complaining about for generations, the fear started giving way to something closer to grim, exhausted pride. We didn't beat an advanced alien invasion through superior technology or brilliant tactics. We beat it because the swamp, the heat, the gators, the hogs, and the sheer unrelenting stubbornness of everybody who's ever chosen to live in this state voluntarily, all added up to something no invasion plan could have possibly accounted for. That's not a strategy. That's just Florida being Florida. And honestly, at this point, I wouldn't have it any other way.